Hey, good morning on this rainy Thursday morning. Anyway, as promised, I decided to devote this video primarily to reviewing a few books, including Arthur C's The Glass Constellation. Now, before continuing, I just want to say that I do not own the copyrights to either of the books that I am going to discuss. And really, these are more just general impressions, more than like a formal critique of either of these books. Now, with Arthur C's The Glass Constellation, what it really brought me to this book to begin with was hearing how much his poetry really centers around the environment. And I could think of another poet who has really had a profound impact upon me, particularly in my more formative years, going through Binghamton University's English department or grad program. And that was W.S. Merwin. And so just knowing that Arthur C's poems really focus a lot on the environment and various things that surround that, I was really interested. So I decided to give this a try. And now, what I will say is, I think he writes in a very beautiful way, or at the very least, his poems seem like they're exquisitely crafted, and also, indeed, like I was reading about online, his poetry definitely does focus a lot on the environment and global warming and things of that nature. So, as advertised. But I will say that after reading maybe around 50 to 75 pages of this, I couldn't really get into this. Now, once again, this may be more of the fault of the reader rather than the author in this situation. And I mean, it is true. There's some times where, for instance, I go to a book, whether it's fiction, poetry, nonfiction, you name it, and for whatever reason, I just cannot get into the said work. And I mean, maybe it's just simply where I'm at the time. Maybe for whatever reason, I'm not feeling it. And yeah, basically, I really wasn't feeling this poetry collection. But I'm not saying it isn't worthwhile to check out. In fact, I think for people who really want to see a master craftsman, particularly when it comes to poetry and stuff of that nature, yeah, definitely check Arthur C. out. And I mean, this book was very highly touted. It was the winner of the National Book Award, among other things. So he's definitely a poet of note. But like I said, for whatever reason, I just could not get too far into this collection. Of course, now maybe part of it is burnout from last semester. I mean, there are some times where I'm working on grading a lot of papers, and particularly at the very end of a semester, I'm, for lack of better terms, not really feeling like reading anything else for a while, because whether it's grading papers or reading other articles or stuff like that, it definitely takes time and effort, and so maybe this is just not the right moment for me to check this out. Or maybe, for whatever reason, the way that he's talking about the environment just is not appealing to me. Now, one thing I will say is, even though there are concrete images in his poetry, I'd say the backdrop of a lot of his poems are also more vague, which honestly does not necessarily need to be a bad thing. In fact, the next book that I was going to bring up in this video, that this poet definitely has been noted as being very vague, among other things. And yet, I have always found John Ashbery to be compelling, regardless of how vague or abstract his poems have been. So once again, I'm not certain why I can't get too far into Arthur C. Maybe, like I said, maybe it's the fault of the reader rather than the writer. And once again, maybe I'll give him another chance coming up in the future. But now, a book that I definitely did read earlier last year, and that I really did gravitate towards, was this one, Parallel Movements of the Hands by John Ashbery. And in particular, I'm not certain if you could read this, but it's 5 unfinished longer works, and this is edited by Emily Skillens. Now, one thing I will say about this book is I do hope that Emily Skillens gets the kudos and the accolades that this warrants, because this was an excellent read. I mean, I have read a lot, like I said, I've read a lot of John Ashbery's poetry throughout the years. And yes, there are some of his poems that I definitely gravitate towards more than others. I feel that his collection, As We Know, is probably amongst one of the best collections I've ever read, period, by a poet. Now, another poetry collection by Ashbery that I didn't quite get into as much was Shadow Train. Because I think after, for instance, As We Know and the wild experimentation that was going on in that collection especially, Shadow Train felt more, for lack of better terms, more run-of-the-mill for him. And I was really hoping that he would experiment even more. But I mean, that's the thing with all poets. I mean, there's going to be some collections where it's just like, yes, you've really nailed this. And there's others where, for the reader, for whatever reason, like with Arthur C., it just doesn't connect. And like I said, maybe years later, the Glass Constellation will really resonate with me. Right now, it's not. But I think a main reason why this book really resonated with me is, yes, it had John Ashbery's poetry in it. But I think what this book was really about was more of the process that John Ashbery went through in creating his poetry. I really felt that was immensely compelling and intriguing. Because I've never actually read a book about John Ashbery where it goes into his process of creating a poem. And anything on that order, I'm there. Because I really want to know, how other poets go about creating their poems. So for me, this was a joy to read. And I think also, let's see, looking through this. Yeah, the 21 variations on my room, especially, I gravitated towards. Because just I love the technique that he was employing, where he starts off with section 1 with 1 line, and then second section he starts with 2 lines, and it goes down the line, or actually maybe it's stanzas. I think it's stanzas, sorry. But nonetheless, he does 1 stanza, then he does 2 stanzas, and as you could sort of gather, after a certain point, things start accruing. And I really appreciated the technique he was trying to employ in this poem. And there are a number of people who there are a number of people who, quite frankly, hate John Ashbery. And I think part of it is because they feel that he is overly abstract. They feel that he's given the reader the finger, in essence, by what he's doing. And quite frankly, some people have said he's a charlatan. And on the other hand, there are a number of people who just love Ashbery to death. They absolutely worship the ground that he walked on. I would say I'm probably more in the middle, even though I definitely enjoy a lot of his poetry. But, I mean, like I said, there are some collections by John Ashbery that don't connect with me as much as others. But this one, like I said, this is a treat. And if you're really curious about John Ashbery's writing process, and also about some of his longer unfinished works, definitely check this out. And like I said before, I hope Emily Skillens gets the kudos and the recognition she deserves for doing a great job of editing this. And like I said, this was superb. Yeah. And of course, like I said, I wanted to keep this video primarily for poetry reviews and whatnot, but I was working on a poem and I did want to share. And this one, like I said, is a little rough. It's, quite frankly, in my composition notebook. And yes, as you can probably tell, also one of my favorite colors is purple, as you can tell with the notebook and also what I'm wearing. So This one is called Somewhere Outside of Greene, New York. And I would say this isn't about a specific area outside of Greene, New York. I think I was going more for a general location feel when I tiled the poem. But, well, I'll just read the poem and you could sort of make your own sort of decisions about the poem and its title from here. The road appears in flashes through my headlights. Otherwise, darkness complete, unceasing. Nothing but trees on either side, their limbs open wide to let in the shadows. My destination, a remote spot on the horizon I can't see. On the radio, 9-inch nails hurt seeps into the car, fills my ears with blue sounds from a distant past. A pair of eyes briefly appears to my left. A deer or bear? Can hardly tell with how fast I'm going. My smartphone lights up in the cup holder. Another message from you. I can't make out the words, but the typing seems frantic. Then again, maybe it's another projection on my part. A feeble attempt at being in someone else's thoughts. The words disappear and I enter a valley where there is nothing but fallow fields. As I pass by telephone poles shaped like crosses, I think back to your face, the words you whispered as I headed out the door. I blink my eyes and spy someone traversing the fields, scythe in hand. Has he come to harvest me? Has he come to plant something? I blink again, and the man is gone. The song ends, and Tonight, Tonight by Smashing Pumpkins blares through the speakers. I'm alone in this clearing shrouded by ghosts. All right. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the reviews and the poem as well. And once again, I'll do another video within the next few weeks, just highlighting some more of the stuff that I'm working on. Anyway, I hope everyone's doing well. Take care.